It's August 2016. The Rio Olympics has just passed with numerous medals won and records broken. But in the aftermath of the Olympics, WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, reported that they had received spear phishing emails to staff and that sensitive information in their medical databases had been leaked. Whilst phishing, which is the impersonation of a reputable institution to obtain sensitive data, usually by email, is a very common scam technique, spear phishing is something very different. Spear phishing involves targeting specific individuals by impersonating a trusted sender. They use information that only the sender would in theory know to trick the victim into revealing sensitive data. Imagine your mum messaging you about an urgent payment she needs help with, complete with details only she would know, like your childhood nickname or a recent family event, and then realizing it wasn't her at all, but a hacker who had perfectly impersonated her. Spear phishing requires much more advanced knowledge of its victims and is therefore much harder to pull off. Clearly, this hack was organised, targeted, and executed by a highly capable group. Analysis of the cyber attack indicated that the hacktivist group Fancy Bear were responsible. Fancy Bear had previously been linked with a number of high-profile hacking incidents, such as a 6-month-long cyber attack on the German parliament, hacks to French television networks, and death threats to US military personnel's wives. But the announcement they just posted on their website was a little different. They announced that they had hacked into WADA's databases and discovered, quote, sensational proof of famous athletes taking doping substances. They intended to release the data announcing the USA Olympic team as their first target. Sure enough, leaks of several highly prominent Olympic athletes' medical data from Europe and America were published on their website. Specifically, data on their TUEs, therapeutic use exemptions prior to the Olympics. These are instances where athletes are allowed to take otherwise banned substances by WADA due to medical exceptions. They are pre-approved by WADA and not a violation of anti-doping rules. However, there have been questions raised about the validity of some athletes abusing TUEs to legally take otherwise banned drugs, which in this case they would not actually need. In fact, many performance-enhancing drugs are used primarily as medicine, which is why TUEs exist. The leaked data featured names like Simone Biles and Serena and Venus Williams, showing that they had received TUEs prior to the Olympics for medical problems they had. Biles received a TUE for ADHD medication. She was able to take Ritalin, which is banned by WADA due to its performance-enhancing effects on focus, fine motor skills, and links with increased explosiveness and endurance, all things very useful for gymnastics. The Williams sisters use corticosteroids that act as anti-inflammatories for injuries, yet they are also linked with increased performance outcomes. September 14th and 15th, more leaks are published, with Tour de France winner Sir Bradley Wiggins being one of the highest profile cases. This one was especially controversial. Whilst the data did not technically act as evidence of prohibited PED usage, it did raise many questions about the validity of these TUEs. Many of these conditions conveniently allow the athletes to take PEDs near the time of huge competitions like the Olympics. Bradley Wiggins received TUEs for triamcinolone injections before 3 major races: the 2011 Tour de France, the 2012 Tour de France, which he won, and the 2013 Giro d'Italia. The substance is known for its strong anti-inflammatory and weight loss properties, which can enhance performance by improving power-to-weight ratio. Seems a little suspicious, especially with cycling's reputation for being rife with doping. September 19th saw Mo Farah, Galen Rupp, and Rafael Nadal's data being leaked, amongst many others. Whilst TUEs are officially meant to offset the negative impact of medical conditions, it could definitely be used to legally take PEDs your competition won't have access to. Richard McLaren, the author of the infamous McLaren report in 2016 that found Russia was systematically doping his athletes, believes the WADA TUE system needs reviewing, as there is too much elasticity in the decision making. Fancy Bear framed these leaks as examples of WADA bias to Western athletes, as it amounts to licenses for doping. WADA do have guidelines to prevent potential legalized doping, only allowing TUEs under exceptional circumstances, but it does raise some questions nonetheless. In the aftermath, WADA condemned the attacks, promising to increase their cybersecurity. All athletes exposed condemned the actions and maintained their innocence, pointing out that the leaks did not technically show them breaking any WADA rules. Despite this, it did block many athletes' reputations and put them under increased scrutiny. But this was not the end of Fancy Bear. February 2017, Fancy Bear hacked into the USA's anti-doping agency USADA and leaked a 278-page report suggesting that Alberto Salazar, head coach of the Nike Oregon team, which included Mo Farah and Galen Rupp, had colluded with Dr. Jeffrey Brown and been found guilty of a host of doping and ethical violations. This included experimenting with PEDs on athletes and economic coercion, with the report noting that athletes were pressured to allow Salazar to experiment his drug theories and training methods on them. Some of the PED usage exposed was prescribing thyroid medication to his athletes, with the hope that this would improve athletes' testosterone levels, netting a performance-enhancing effect. Similar testing on athletes was used with other substances such as L-carnitine, calcitonin, and high doses of vitamin D and the iron supplement ferrosulfate. These leaks put Alberto Salazar under further scrutiny, as he was already being investigated for violating doping rules. It also put Mo Farah and Galen Rupp under extra pressure due to their close relationship with Salazar as their coach. Farah denied any wrongdoing and said he always advocates for clean sport, yet this controversy would follow him for the rest of his career. Salazar would eventually be banned for coaching for 4 years in 2020 when he was found guilty of doping violations and sexual and emotional misconduct. Whilst the leaks did not directly lead to this, they certainly increased public knowledge and pressure of the charges against Salazar, and therefore may have indirectly bolstered the investigations against him. But the hacks did not stop there. In April 2017, the IAAF, International Amateur Athletics Federation, noted that Fancy Bear had gained access to their servers and accessed documents that had more athletes' TUEs. The full data was eventually released, along with many athletes' biological passport data. The biological passport was introduced in 2009 and keeps a regular tabs of athletes' blood markers from doping tests in order to detect abnormalities. This allows for tailored analysis of each athlete and flags up any suspicious differences in blood markers that might be caused by PED usage. For instance, increased hemoglobin and hematocrit levels may imply EPO usage. Based on the biological passport, WADA ranks athletes' data into several categories. The leaks marked none other than Mo Farah and Galen Rupp as likely doping, passport suspicious, further data required by a hematological expert. Likely doping does not necessarily mean an athlete has been caught, but they will most likely be target tested and are of course under extra scrutiny. Other athletes in the leak include Henrik Ingebrigtsen, 2012 European 1500 meter champion and brother of Jakob Ingebrigtsen. Henrik was twice marked as blood pass suspicious, more information required. It's worth noting that a suspicious blood passport result is not direct evidence of doping and could have several reasons behind it. For instance, Geert Ingebrigtsen, father and former coach of Henrik Ingebrigtsen, stated at the time that the suspicious hemoglobin levels noted in the data could be due to a mixture of altitude training and genetics, noting that he himself has very high hemoglobin levels. WADA requires athletes to justify their adverse reactions if 2 separate reviews find the readings of the ABP to be adverse. Farah himself was subsequently cleared of the adverse findings later in the review, yet these leaks cast further suspicion on his doping case, especially after the controversies with his links to the USADA leaks. Some questions still remain though. Who exactly are Fancy Bear, and why are they doing this? While initially thought to be an independent hacking group, Fancy Bear have been linked to Russia's GRU, Main Intelligence Directorate, the military intelligence agency. It is thought to be part of a broader network of state-sponsored actors working under the direction of the Russian authorities to advance geopolitical goals. This was established when the security firm FireEye released a detailed report designating the group as Advanced Persistent Threat 28. The report found operational details indicating that the source is a government sponsor based in Moscow. The FBI have publicly stated that Fancy Bear is a Russian state-sponsored actor. CrowdStrike, a prominent cybersecurity firm, say Fancy Bear is attributed to the main Directorate of General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. This is partly based on the highly advanced methods the hackers use to obtain data, such as spear phishing and the use of 0 days. A 0 day is a previously unknown software vulnerability that hackers exploit before the developer has a chance to fix it. They are incredibly difficult to obtain, indicating a high-level actor in the hacking operation, especially as Fancy Bear were thought to have found 0 days in global software such as Microsoft Windows. Their motives also aligned with the Russian government, who had faced an international ban from the Rio Olympics in 2016 due to evidence of state-sponsored doping, as previously mentioned in the McLaren report. This dealt huge reputational damage to Russia and its athletes, which still remains to this day. It's thought that the Olympics hack was part of a larger strategy to weaken Western influence and discredit Western institutions like WADA. Hacks followed very soon after the Russian ban and during a period of heavy scrutiny on Russia's doping agency. Additionally, Fancy Bear's primary targets were US athletes and other high-profile Western sports figures who happened to come from Russia's geopolitical rivals. By focusing on athletes like Mo Farah and Galen Rupp, they aimed to raise doubts about the legitimacy of their performance and question the integrity of anti-doping rules, especially the TUEs granted to them for medical conditions. The Russian embassy publicly tweeted support of the leaks, citing the need for transparency in anti-doping. Russian President Vladimir Putin also stated that the findings from Fancy Bear's leaks should lead to significant scrutiny of the athletes involved. Since 2017, Fancy Bear have been linked to a number of other attacks, notably the IOC in 2018 and more anti-doping cases in the build-up to the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. However, the information in this leaks garnered less interest compared to their previous ones, and WADA claims some of the information leaked was fabricated. Ultimately, none of the leaks showed definitive evidence of doping, but it did succeed in casting doubt over Western athletes. It also raises questions about things like the TUE system. Is it a valid and necessary model, or is it a way to bypass anti-doping regulations? If you want to see more documentaries on stories in the athletics world, then click on this playlist here. If you want to see a video on how and why elite athletes take steroids, then click on this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.